Hey everyone, Brian here from Kaiser Bros Media, and welcome to another edition of the Corvette series. In this episode, you'll be coming along with us as we purchase a C3 sight unseen from eBay. For those that are new to the channel, we already have a couple of Corvettes, a C4 and a C5, but there's just something about the style of the C3 that makes it so appealing, and we just had to get one. By this point, I'd pretty much been searching eBay every day for different C3 Corvettes and had a pretty good idea of what was available and what my budget would be. Now here's one of the things about the C3 Corvette. Although in my opinion, the C3 generation is the best looking, it's probably also the worst performing due to a lot of the regulatory restrictions back in the 70s and early 80s. So ideally I was looking for a project that I could actually swap out an engine and get a little bit more horsepower and better performance than what was available at the time. After searching the eBay inventory, that weekend I became locked in on two different options. The first C3 up for auction that weekend was a yellow 79 located in Texas. It appeared to be in very good condition and only had 54,000 original miles. Even better was the fact that it had a L82 engine, which although very weak compared to engines from other Corvette generations, still packed a little more punch and had more horsepower than the L48 alternative. Yellow isn't my favorite color, but the paint and body appeared to be in immaculate condition, especially with the current price that it was at. The interior was also very clean and appeared to be recently restored, which was an added bonus. I'd recently seen similar C3s listed here in Southern California for between 15 to 20K, so even though I preferred a project, the value here seemed to be too good to pass up. I also liked the fact that it was located in Texas instead of somewhere on the East Coast, so the shipping costs would most likely be more reasonable. The second C3 with an auction ending that weekend was a red 1980 located in Miami, Florida. This one was definitely more in line with my original plan for a project. Per the listing description, the car was a roller and didn't even run or brake. It wasn't listed in the description, but using the VIN I was able to determine that it had a less desirable L48 engine. It would have been nice if it came with an L82 like the first one, but since this one was a project that would most likely need a new or rebuilt engine, the L48 wasn't as much of a deal breaker here for me. I'd always wanted to do an LS2 or LS3 engine swap in a C3, so this may be the perfect opportunity for that. Just like yellow, red isn't my favorite color, but this one's paint wasn't nearly as immaculate as the first, so I figured it'd be much easier to convince myself to paint something other than the original color. The interior appeared to be somewhat decent, but there were obvious cracks in places like the dashboard, meaning a lot of restoration would be needed. That prior week, I looked at a very similar C3 up in LA area that was in much worse condition, but ended up selling for $7,000, so I could see there was some potential value here. It was definitely less than ideal that it was located in Miami, since I'd have to ship across the country to San Diego, but the estimated shipping price via eBay was $1,200, which still allowed some room for a deal value when combined with the listing price. I checked the yellow listing about once every hour that Friday since the auction was ending on Saturday, and I was surprised to see little to no movement in the price. When Saturday came, I logged in about an hour prior to the listing ending and immediately started envisioning how cool it would be to buy this C3 for such a low price. Since I'd be buying either of these cars sight unseen, I set a pretty aggressive budget for each that would allow me to account for any unknown problems or issues that would inevitably be discovered after I purchased them. For the yellow C3, I set a budget of $8,000 for the listing price, since the shipping cost would be about $1,000, and I wanted to leave about $3,000 for fixes and improvements after the purchase. Based on the lack of recent activity in the listing, I felt like I at least had a decent chance to win the auction, but I knew I'd have some competition. I didn't want to show my hand too early, so I decided to wait until the final minutes to enter my bid. I nervously clicked on the bid button, entered my price, and outbid. I sat there a bit stunned that my offer wasn't the highest, and after thinking about how good of a deal this could be, I decided to up my offer a little bit. I again clicked on the bid button, put in my best and final offer, and outbid again. Since this was basically my knockout punch, I decided I'd had enough and let the auction end without bidding anymore. I quickly reminded myself that the original plan was to find a restoration project, so the red one that was ending the next day became my immediate focus. When the next day came, which was Sunday, I felt a lot more pressure to win this auction since I made up my mind that I was going to end the weekend with the C3 no matter what. Just like the yellow one, I was a little surprised that there was very little activity on the listing up until the final hours of the auction. For this one, I'd set myself a budget of $4,500 for the listing and then $1,500 for the shipping, making a total budget of $6,000. Although this one was in a lot worse condition than the first, I figured there'd be a lot more competition on this listing since it was available at a much more affordable price, meaning there'd be more potential buyers. I took a similar approach with my bidding strategy and decided to wait until the close of the auction to submit my bid. As the clock wound down to the target time, I clicked the bid button, entered my offer, and highest bidder. The final seconds of the auction dragged on for what seemed like hours as I constantly refreshed the page expecting to be notified that I'd been outbid. Then, once the auction finally ended, instead of telling me I'd won, I kept getting a message saying that they were still determining the winner. I figured it would be just my luck that I'd be outbid at literally the last second possible. However, after a couple more refreshes, I finally got the confirmation that I was the winner. I quickly paid the $500 deposit to secure my purchase, arranged a wire transfer with the seller, and then moved on to what would be the most difficult part of the process, arranging shipping. Although eBay partners with a company called uShip to provide you with an estimated shipping price prior to bidding, you don't really know the actual shipping cost until you win the auction and then put the listing on the uShip marketplace. This allows shipping brokers to contact you with quotes based on the specifics that are provided in the eBay listing. After receiving a bunch of quotes via email, one company, American Car Ship, immediately stood out to the lowest cost that they had quoted. Most of the quotes came in around $1,500 to $2,000, but this one came in at less than half of that range. I should have trusted my gut with this one since the quote was so low compared to others, but I looked at the reviews of the company online, and since they seemed to be legit, I decided to move forward with them. First, I made sure that they knew the condition of the vehicle, including the fact that the brakes didn't work. They responded back that it would be a little bit extra cost for the winching and forklift service. Since they were still way cheaper than the others with the extra cost, I agreed to move forward and sign the agreement. However, that's when the problems immediately started. The driver they supposedly had lined up for immediate pickup suddenly had a broken winch. An entire day passed with no communication, and then I got this email full of excuses. They even suggested that I have the dealer load the car for them. I later found out that right after they had sent that email, they also called the seller and told him that they would need him to provide a winch or forklift. The shipping company responded to my email with nothing but more excuses, but did offer the potential refund at the end of the email. A few hours later, the true bait and switch came when they finally located a driver, but told me it would be more than 2 times the original cost that they quoted me. Even though I would have been willing to pay that amount, I was completely done with this company due to the bait and switch tactics, as well as the headaches they'd caused both the seller and myself. I decided to try another company called ShipWit that caught my attention due to the claim of an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. At this point, I knew that they most likely underquoted me in terms of price, and I would realistically pay around the quote that the original carrier came back with, since that was the going rate. Since I'd lost almost a full week due to the runaround from the first company, my focus at this point was on finding a company that could get the car picked up as soon as possible versus finding the lowest price. Just as before, I made sure that they knew the exact condition of the vehicle, but also wanted to see how quickly they could schedule the pickup. Just as expected, the winching services pushed the cost up a bit, but I was still okay with the extra cost at this point. During the call, they explained that they couldn't get it picked up that same day, but they would do their very best to get it picked up the following day, which was okay with me at this point. After most of the day had passed, I reached out for an update. They responded back, and it looked like they'd made absolutely no progress with scheduling, and had simply just posted it on a dispatch site, hoping that a carrier would pick it up. At this point, I'd lost all confidence since they had told me over the phone that it would be scheduled for pickup that same day. They essentially responded back, telling me they would expect responses from the shipping carriers within the next couple of hours. I let them know that I could wait a little bit longer, but if nothing was scheduled, I need to cancel the agreement and move on to another shipping company. After not hearing any updates for more than an hour after the deadline that they provided, I reached out to them again for an update. Now, they had supposedly found a carrier, but couldn't get them to agree to my required pickup date. Realizing it was pretty much a lost cause with this company, I made one more attempt to give them a deadline for scheduling. After no contact that next morning, I let them know that I was going to be canceling the agreement. I still got no response, so I ended up having to call them and formally cancel the agreement. At this point, I'd pretty much lost all hope in finding a shipping carrier, but I decided to try a third company called Ship Auto Now. When I first contacted them, I pretty much laid it all out on the line and let them know about the previous experiences and how I was not going to put up with any games or BS. They responded back and let me know that instead of giving me a quote up front, they would first negotiate an acceptable price with the carrier and then let me know the exact cost. I liked that approach since the speed of the pickup was more important than finding the cheapest cost at that point. They told me they'd get to work on it and make it a priority. The next day, they responded with a pre-confirmed price from the carrier. Since this was in line with some of the original quotes, I decided to move forward. I made sure to get extra confirmation that they knew about the condition of the vehicle and also the requirements that the seller had provided. After they confirmed, they sent the paperwork over for me to sign. I agreed and completed the contract so they could move forward with scheduling. They ended up calling me that next Thursday morning from the pickup site, so the pickup dilemma was finally over. It ended up taking a little bit more than a week for the carrier to make his way out to San Diego. So the shipping carrier just got here, but I guess the road to my house is too steep and narrow for him to drive up. We're pulled off here on a side road, and the plan is to move the C3 from the carrier to a small tow truck, and then they're going to take that up to my house. The tow truck pulled up, and they're now moving it and loading it up. So the C3 is finally here. Just got it unloaded off the truck. I haven't looked at it yet, so let's go look at it together. And here it is, first reveal, looking all band up like a hospital patient. Even with the tape over them, I could immediately notice that the T-tops were completely damaged and would need a full replacement. When the shipping carrier arrived for the pickup, they actually called me and asked if they could put some tape on the areas of the car they weren't sure was secured, like the hood latch and the T-tops and windows. I'd imagine them putting a small strip over each area, but I had no idea they would completely cover it with so much tape. I also noticed that all the tires were old and flat and would need to be inflated to allow me to even push the car around. In order to get a better look, I got to work removing the tape, which as you'll see was quite the task. Now that I got all the tape off, we can get a better look at the condition of the car. The paint is definitely a little more faded than the eBay pictures showed, so I won't be too attached to the original paint and may end up going with a different color altogether. Let me know in the comments below if you have any suggestions on a color you think we should paint it. The tape was also so strong that parts of the glass from the T-tops and some of the paint was pulled off along with it. If I'd known that the tape was going to be so strong, I'd have asked them to limit the amount they used, but I guess it's not too big of a deal. Last but not least, let's take a look at the engine. Looks to be about what I expected, and I definitely won't feel bad about a potential LS2 or LS3 swap. I was also looking at some crate engines, so let us know in the comments what you think we should do from an engine standpoint. Should we go with a modern performance we can get from an LS2 or LS3, or should we go the route of a numbers matching restoration with the sacrifice of some power? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And that's a wrap for this video. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to hit that like button. For more car and Corvette related content, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, and also let us know what you think about the C3 and what you think we should do with it in the comments below. See you on the next video.